What if you followed your instincts and saved your willpower? I just came back from another 10-day Vipassana retreat.
Yeah, really now. Good luck with everything. You're very brave. Thank you.
At the end of the course, when people were finally allowed to talk again, someone asked me how old I was. 42, I said. They got surprised. This kind of thing happens to me often, and honestly, a part of me still feels secretly happy when it happens. Over the years, I've started wondering why. It definitely has nothing to do with skincare. About 6 or 7 years ago, I stopped using all skincare products. Creams, essence, lotions, eye creams, all of it. I think it probably has more to do with my state of mind. One thing about me is that for most of my life, I tend to follow my instincts, the things I feel drawn to. I rarely force myself to do things through sheer willpower. That may be a very important reason. But this wasn't always the case. It came after slowly pulling myself free from things that were not right for me. 10 years ago, I was still in my previous marriage. At that point, I was 2 years away from divorce. To be honest, my ex-husband wasn't a bad person at all, and our relationship wasn't especially terrible either. From the outside, it probably even looked pretty decent. But I felt trapped in that relationship. I felt like I was slowly losing myself. So eventually I left. A year after divorce, I fell in love again. He was an architect. During the honeymoon phase, I invited him to move in with me. But after about 2 months, I already started regretting it a little. Once two people live together, there are so many things to deal with. And whenever I had free time, I would automatically start thinking, what should we do together? I rarely thought about what I wanted to do alone. After we broke up, I became much more cautious about relationships. I realized that once I enter a relationship, it's very easy for me to slowly drift away from myself. Marriage isn't for me, and romantic relationships feel optional to me as well. A lot of things that are considered good in life simply may not be right for me. But there was one thing about my ex-boyfriend that deeply inspired me. At that time, I was still working in a large institution. I had already been there for more than 10 years. It was the kind of stable job where you could almost see your future all the way to retirement. At the same time, I was constantly sketching. I drew everywhere I went. My ex-boyfriend was a talented architectural designer. He had wanted to become an architect since middle school, and the wish had come true. His work was extremely demanding. Sometimes he had to stay up all night working, but his eyes had light in them. He always carried a tape measure with him. Sometimes when we were out, he would suddenly stop and measure the dimensions of the stone colliding on a building facade. And seeing that affected me deeply. I started wondering what would happen if I turned the thing I truly loved into my actual work. And that's eventually what led me to quit my job and move to the UK to study art. I'm glad I made that decision. After settling in London for a while, I did a big declutter, and looking through my old clothes, I couldn't help thinking, why is everything so dull and lifeless? Looking back at old photos, I realized it wasn't just the clothes that had no personality. I didn't have much spark in me either. The job itself wasn't exhausting, but doing work I didn't care about was draining in its own way. In Chinese medicine, there's a belief that long-term emotional suppression can manifest physically. Before leaving China, I had a medical checkup. The doctors found a serious cyst in my breast. They recommended surgery immediately and told me that if I didn't do surgery, I absolutely had to come back for checkups every 6 months. I thought, okay, I will just monitor it regularly. But after moving to the UK, I never really went back to check it again. Medical resources were harder to access and life became busy. The next time I returned to China was 2.5 years later. I went back to the same hospital to examine the cyst again. The doctor became very serious and immediately arranged a very detailed scan. After examining me, the ultrasound doctor looked confused. It seems totally gone. She kept checking, but couldn't find it. She didn't feel comfortable signing off alone, so she called in a second doctor, then a third. All 3 doctors examined me before they finally felt confident enough to sign the report. The cyst was completely gone. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe the body is just more honest than we are. My life still isn't perfect. It's been nearly 2 years since I graduated, and I still haven't really achieved much in the art world. Sometimes I feel anxious, but I have never regretted the choices I made. When we were children, adults always ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? Some kids say they want to become scientists or police officers. Whenever I was asked that question, I could not answer. I genuinely didn't know what I wanted to become. But even back then, I vaguely knew that there was a certain kind of life I did not want. I didn't want a life where I felt trapped inside a fixed pattern, slowly becoming unhappy. And I think, in that sense, I haven't betrayed the child I used to be. So, even though I'm still struggling toward my artistic ambitions, overall, my days feel full. And deep down, I feel at peace with myself. In Taoism, there's a phrase, 赤子之心, the heart of a newborn. It's considered one of the highest states a person can reach. Now, I slowly feel that maybe true youth is not about being 20 years old. It's about no longer forcing yourself to live against your own nature.